check this out.
Why do you think it is that in a Wall Street Journal poll, 2/3 of Democrats think President Biden is too old to run again?
Look, here's what I know. Here's what I can speak to.
Look at this. Somebody come look at this.
I can speak to that a president who has wisdom. I can speak to a president who has experience. I can speak to a president who has done has taken historic action and has delivered in historic pieces of legislation. And that's important.
Oh, dude, that's crazy.
When the last guy who was in this in the Oval Office talked about infrastructure week, it was a joke. And the president passed a pretty important piece of legislation in a bipartisan way because of his wisdom, because of his experience. And now we have infrastructure decade.
What is that supposed to mean?
And it doesn't stop there. It starts last week. We talked about how the president beat Big Pharma, something that elected officials and politicians have been trying to do for 33 years, and he's been able to do that. And we introduced the first tranche, the first 10 drugs that Medicare can now negotiate on. Wow! Right? And it's going to save money for our seniors, for Americans across the country. The gentleman that introduced the president, Stephen, who's 71 years old, paying $16,000 a month. $16,000 a month.
What did he say?
Just to stay alive, because he had cancer and diabetes. And he cannot retire because he has to pay $16,000 a month. And because of the work that this president has done, he doesn't have to do that anymore.
Why? Why?
And I'll say one last thing. I know you have a follow-up, probably about 5 more, but let me just say this one last thing, is that the interesting thing about this is that the president has done these historic pieces of legislation, whether it's the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, whether it's the American Rescue Plan, whether it's CHIPS and Science Act.
What the hell are you talking about?
Whether it's the Inflation Reduction Act. There are some Republicans, right, in the House, in the Senate, that did not vote for any of these legislations that I just laid out, who go back to their state, go back to their district, and take credit for something that the president did. So this is not unusual. They did this in 2019, they did this in 2020, and they did this in 2022, and the president continues to prevail.
5 minutes later.
I also wanted to ask about the Univision interview. The president said that he was examining ways to potentially shut down the border. It's a phrase that can mean lots of different things to lots of different people, so I'm wondering if you could maybe explain what the president means when he talks about shutting.
Hey, y'all, come look at this.
So I think the bottom line with all of this, and I've said this many times, the number one way to really deal with what's happening at the border is to move forward with the bipartisan agreement proposal that came forward out of the Senate, and that obviously was rejected by Republicans because of what the former president told Republicans.
Stop the cap.
That's what we want to see. That's how we deal with the broken system, the immigration system obviously being broken for decades now, and dealing with the challenges at the border. We're always going to look at executive actions. We are, and we have been, but really, really, truly to move forward, we have to make sure that we get this proposal done.
Yes, exactly.
I understand that your preference is obviously for that legislation to Frankenstein back to life, but since the president himself said that you guys are looking at those executive actions, can you talk, is the sort of universe here just trying to restrict asylum claims? Is it changing processing times, or is it as extreme? You know, President Trump, when he talked about ending legal travel or legal trade across the border.
I think here's what I can say: we evaluate all options, right? We do. We evaluate all options.
That was a lie.
As it relates to executive actions, we just have not made a decision on this yet, but the president believes it's important to evaluate those options to see what's at our disposal to move forward. And we haven't made a decision, but what we will continue to do is, because there is a proposal out there that is bipartisan, would deal with what the challenges that we're seeing at the border. We think it's important. It was supported by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Border Patrol unions. It is a bipartisan, again, proposal that we think would be tough and fair. We want to see Congress move forward with it. Whatever. And so we're going to continue to call for that. But as it relates to what we're looking at, we're always looking at options. I just don't have anything. We're always going to evaluate our options. I just don't have anything to share. We haven't made a decision.
the trilateral today is open to the press, but the bilateral beforehand is not. I was wondering, first, of course, to request that it be possible that we get in there, but if not, if you could walk through why the White House decided, because normally those meetings are.
Good question.
Yeah, no, it's a meeting between the two countries. I think it's important to note it shows the strength of the U.S. alliance and how important it is for these two countries to speak with one another and have this meeting.
And how's that working out for you?
Look, I will say this: their schedules, both schedules were, the president and the Philippines leader have a very packed schedule, and so we weren't able to make it into open that to the press.
Why? Why?
But what is important is there is going to be a trilat, which is a historic meeting that's happening later today, and you'll have an opportunity, obviously, that is open to the press, and you'll have an opportunity there to see the three leaders together.
No, man, you're making me fall asleep.
Two quick ones. First, following up on Ouija, in the White House's view, who is to blame for the famine or imminent famine that we're witnessing right now in Gaza?
Here's our focus, and I get the question, and the humanitarian situation in Gaza obviously is dire, and that is why the president is doing everything that he can to get more humanitarian aid in. And that's what our focus is going to be. Was
it a mistake not to push Benjamin Netanyahu sooner to open Ashdod and the Erez crossing, which would have allowed the prevention of what Samantha Power agrees is famine in northern Gaza?
Yo, the man asked you a simple question.
But here's the thing. For every time the president has spoken to the prime minister, there's part of that conversation has been to do more in humanitarian aid.
So why did it change now?
I said, wait a minute.
It didn't change. It was a continued. It was the conversation that.
Why did Netanyahu respond differently now?
That's a conversation for the prime minister.
Potential that the U.S. would change policy.
That is a question for the prime minister. But what I want to make sure that is very clear here is that we have seen 1,000 trucks go into Gaza over the last 3 days. That is important.
What?
They have, the prime minister made commitments. They're upholding their commitments. We want to see more. We've seen good progress. And what we're seeing in Gaza, obviously, we have said over and over again that the situation, the humanitarian situation in Gaza is dire.
Can you help me? Last question. Can you help me understand one thing? Yesterday, the president made very clear that the U.S.'s commitment to Israel is, in his words, he said it twice, ironclad. How can the U.S.'s commitment to Israel be, quote, ironclad when in the statement released on behalf of the White House last week after his conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu, he said that the U.S. would reassess its policy as it relates to Israel, given the way it prosecutes the war in Gaza?
Check this out.
So
the ironclad and be reassessed.
Look, this is an important relationship that we have with Israel. They are our friends. And we have always said that we are committed to make sure that Israel's security, especially against these threats that we're hearing from Iran.
Shut up, bro, shut up, bro.